Hi, I'm Shireen Williams from Pro Football Talk, and I'm joined today by Christy Scales from the Cowboys Radio Network. And we're going to do some Cowboys talk, but I think we have to start first with the postseason. A year ago, the Cowboys were here. They had just lost to Green Bay in this round, and we thought this was going to be the year possibly for the Cowboys. And here they are at home watching on TV and saw one of the greatest games, I think, in NFL history. But there are Cowboys connections in that game, Christy, with the Minnesota Vikings. And Mike Zimmer was here as defensive coordinator and assistant coach for a really long time. I think we all know Mike and love Mike and are really happy for what he's accomplished. Still lives in South Lake in the offseason,
right.
and of course Terrence Newman at cornerback. But I know you've had some great stories of Zim and when he was with the Cowboys.
Well, thank you for wearing your purple today in honor of Big Zim and also Little Zim. Of course,
Yeah.
Mike's son, Adam Zimmer, is the linebackers coach for the Minnesota Vikings, and I remember when he was a kid running around the practice fields at Valley Ranch, and of course Terrence Newman is one of the guys. He was the same rookie Cowboy class as Jason Witten and Tony Romo, but Terrence is actually older than both of them, and Terrence at 39 years old has a chance if they can beat the Eagles in Philly this weekend to go to his first Super Bowl, and it's amazing to play cornerback at age 39. But Zim is the one. Have you been around a more intense coach than Mike Zimmer? I'm talking about a practice,
Probably
not just a game.
No, probably not.
Yeah, you could. Mike Zimmer could take the same four-letter word and curse word and use it in one sentence as a noun, an adjective, a verb, a transitive, intransitive, and a dangling participle.
Yeah.
So we certainly learned some different uses of the English language with Mike Zimmer, but as intense a coach he is, you know, he's that much of a great guy and really good soul, and there are so many people at the Star in Frisco with the Cowboys that have great memories of Mike Zimmer and his time here, and those of us who covered him, that there are a lot of people in Cowboys Nation that I think are rooting for the Vikings because of Zimmer.
Yeah.
Big Zim, Little Zim, Terrence Newman, of course, Tony Sperano, Andre Patterson, some other Cowboys coaches as well.
Which is a good segue into what we're going through, what we're seeing with the Cowboys right now, which is all the coaching changes. It's probably easier to address who's coming back than who's actually leaving, because most of the coaching staff has left already, and some things still up in the air. But the two people we know are going to be back are the coordinators, Scott Linehan and Rod Marinelli. How much do you think that adds to the consistency, all that stuff? They don't have to learn a new offense, don't have to learn a new defense. And then just with the assistant coaches, how much is that going to affect this football team going into next year?
Yeah, well, 10 months ago, what was the main thing we were talking about? It was the Cowboys re-signing offensive coordinator Scott Linehan and defensive coordinator Rod Marinelli, and we talked about that being the biggest move of the offseason by Jerry Jones and the Cowboys organization because of the continuity and coming off the 13-win season. And so when the Cowboy offense ended the season with such a thud, particularly with the passing game, I know that there were a lot of fans and media that were calling for Scott Linehan's head, as well as Jason Garrett's, of course. But no, I think it's good because look at what they did with Dak Prescott in the rookie season and the way they developed him. Were you surprised about Wade Wilson, the quarterback's coach, not coming back? He's one of 6 assistant coaches that isn't coming back because, you know, with the progress that Dak made his rookie year, so much of it was attributed to Scott Linehan that I thought that Wade Wilson kind of got overlooked after that rookie year. And do you think maybe he's kind of the fall guy for this past season?
I agree with you. That surprised me probably more than any other coaching move they made was to not renew his contract because of the work he did with Dak, particularly in that rookie season. And I agree with you. I don't think he got enough credit for the progress that Dak made. That came directly from Wade Wilson working with him on a daily basis. I thought Wade was one of the better quarterbacks coaches in this league. Probably retired. We'll see what he does here. But an excellent quarterbacks coach. And yeah, I'm very surprised by that one that they didn't renew, because he would have come back. It's not like he wanted to go somewhere else. Like Derek Dooley, they wanted back. they want to retain him. His contract was up and he ended up going to Missouri. This is not somebody who wanted to go to another team.
Yeah, it's funny because on the regular season finale, the 6-0 thrilling win over the Eagles on the plane ride home, I actually was, for part of the plane ride, I got to move up to first class. And actually it's because my seat was being taken by Jason Witten, who was talking with Babe Laufenberg, my seatmate, on the way back. And so I had to move up and take Jason Witten's spot for a little while, but I was sitting next to Derek Dooley, and he didn't tell me at that time that he was leaving for Missouri, but we were talking about how much fun it is in the SEC. And of course, he's former head coach of Tennessee, and before that, Louisiana Tech before he moved up. And of course, his dad, Vince Dooley, all those years for the Georgia Bulldogs and winning the national championship there. So no, it was not a surprise that Derek left to go back to college football, and glad for him that he landed at Mizzou. But there's another person that we both have great respect for, and you've actually known him longer than me, but the past 5 seasons, the special teams coordinator for the Cowboys has been Rich Bisaccia. We talked about the intensity of Mike Zimmer. That's kind of like on steroids with Rich Bisaccia. And of course, you were with him with Tampa Bay, and Rich has gone to the Oakland Raiders and is joining John Gruden's staff. So what do you think about the change over there?
Yeah, reunited with John Gruden. Was not surprised by that move.
Right.
He and John go back so far, and I know he has a lot of respect for John Gruden. That one didn't surprise me a bit. Maybe a little bit that the Cowboys let him out of his contract to go do that, because he is one of the better special teams coaches in this league.
And he did when Marinelli and Linehan were re-upped last March.
Right.
Bisaccia was as well.
Absolutely, and they wanted to keep him, and they really like him. But I think it says something about the Cowboys organization, too, that they allow coaches to leave. If they don't really want to be here, they want to be somewhere else. They have had this philosophy most times of letting guys go somewhere else. Not always, because I know Bisaccia wanted to go last year, and they didn't let him go, or a couple years ago. So I do like that, and I think it's good for their organization, because you want guys who want to be here.
Right.
And want to coach here.
So what do you think is going to happen with Matt Eberflus then? Matt Eberflus is the linebackers coach, and he is basically Rod Marinelli's right-hand man, for lack of a better term, and a real up-and-comer around the NFL. I say up-and-comer, and by that I mean his name is kind of getting out to fans and then national media, but the people within the ranks of NFL coaching have known about Eberflus for the past few years, and I'm surprised that he hasn't gotten more national attention.
I always thought he was going to be the next defensive coordinator here. They were grooming him to take that role, and that still could be the case. If he ends up staying, he could end up being the defensive coordinator here for Rod Marinelli when Marinelli's done. Here, I think he's a very good football coach, and I think he would be a very good defensive coordinator when he gets that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, Rod will be 69,
Yeah.
Rod Marinelli, by the time next season starts. But this guy's a football lifer. I mean, I can't, and I was just visiting with him last week in his office there at the Star in Frisco, and he still has the same passion and intensity and his thing, and it was the same thing with Bisaccia and Coach Garrett. Their mantra is not just coach the player, but coach the man. And Rod actually devotes a part of every Saturday morning meeting. The first, 25 minutes of it isn't even X's and O's. It's about life skills and things like that. And so I don't see Marinelli's passion diminishing at all. So I think the thing with Eberflus is, how long do you wait?
Yeah, no question. Well, we're coming up on free agency. It's hard to believe, but it's going to be here in 2 months, and that's the next step for the Cowboys. And before we talk about this year, I think you have to talk about the Cowboys' philosophy and really how it's changed since they went after Brandon Carr and gave him that $50.1 million contract and didn't get their money's worth. Since that time, their philosophy on free agency has completely changed. And they go after kind of the second tier of free agents. And when you look at what they got from last year, it was not a lot, Christy, what they got out of that free agent class from last season. And they need to get more this season.
Yeah, there's a list of the upcoming free agents, the guys who could leave, but as for the ones who the Cowboys actually signed last year, the biggest impacts on the team were actually the ones that they kept, and that was Terrence Williams and Bryce Butler at wide receiver, right? They retained them because those guys could have walked. But other than retaining those two guys, the biggest signing was Nolan Carroll, who lasted for a month, right?
Yeah.
They signed him, and of course they had the three young defensive backs that they drafted with Awuzie and Jordan Lewis and Xavier Woods, who really came on at the end. And other than that, it was Stephen Paya, who was a defensive tackle who only played about 6 weeks before a knee injury ended his career. So he's done, and they ended up Demontre Moore was another player that they brought in who was a washout who didn't finish the season. And then you had Byron Bell, who ended up being your swing tackle at the end of the season. And, I think he has another year on the contract coming up. But are they going to go ahead and stick with Byron Bell? Or I would say that swing tackle, offensive line in general, but specifically swing tackle, is a position, and that's backup left tackle and right tackle, by the way. So you have the ability to play either side, to step in for Tyron Smith on the left side or Lyle Collins on the right side. And it was Chaz Green, and then it was Byron Bell. And, I would assume that there's a veteran free agent, a guy who was with another team last year that'll probably be the swing tackle
So
next
do they
year.
change their philosophy, Christy? Do you think they go out and get some big name free agents? Now we know they're not going to get those top free agents on.
Sure, because the top free agents on the list are the quarterbacks.
We know they're not going after those guys, and one of their guys is obviously a top free agent in DeMarcus Lawrence. But do they go out and spend more money this season and try to supplement and fill in some of those gaps that they haven't done?
I think they have to, particularly on offense and particularly at wide receiver, because I don't think they can come back next year with the same wide receiver core, and they need someone to take the top off the defense, right? And Bryce Butler, it sounds like Bryce Butler is not coming back, and he was kind of the down the field guy for the Cowboys receiving corps the last couple of years. So if Bryce Butler is not back and Des Bryant is not, that's another discussion for another time, is will he have to take a pay cut? But they're going to have to upgrade and bring some offensive playmakers in, because it's like, okay, we'll go ahead and take one in the draft. Well, they're picking at, 19?
Well, let's look at the receivers taken in the top 10 this year, 3 of them, and they did not produce. Receivers don't just come in out of college and come into the NFL and take the NFL over. It just doesn't happen. You may draft a number 1 receiver who will eventually be your number 1 receiver, but it's not going to be next year.
Yeah, well, Corey came into the Jaguars and he didn't get his. It was a great play to help win the divisional round playoff game at the Steelers, but that was his first touchdown catch of the year. Yeah. So, and he was
Corey Davis for the Titans.
I'm sorry, for the Titans.
Yes.
Corey Davis for the Titans, and that was Saturday, and he was one of the top 10 picks of the draft, number 4 overall, or number 5.
Yeah.
Number 5. So you can't count on the wide receivers, as you said, coming in.
Yeah, no question. So I do think they go that route. Cowboys free agents, the top one is DeMarcus Lawrence.
Absolutely.
We know he's going to stay. They're going to franchise tag him if they have to. They're not letting DeMarcus Lawrence get out. We're agreed on that, right?
There's no way. There's no way, because Jerry Jones finally has his war daddy as pass rusher again. So he's been looking for one since DeMarcus Ware left.
So that leaves Anthony Hitchens perhaps as their top free agent that they'll have to try to retain. What do they pay him? Are they going to keep him, I guess? What's your opinion on him?
My opinion is whatever it takes to keep Anthony Hitchens, keep Anthony Hitchens, but they're not going to overspend. They're not going. I think they have a budget in mind. I don't know what that is, but if Anthony Hitchens is able to score big time with another team, I don't think the Cowboys are going to in their minds, overcommit financially to him, because they would say, okay, well, we have Jalen Smith, that can start in the middle, and then we'll, of course, Sean Lee at weak side linebacker. But history tells you that Sean Lee is not going to be able to make it through a season, and Jalen Smith should be much better than he was, especially earlier in the 2017 season. He got much better as it went on and wasn't overexposed and, played behind Anthony Hitchens. But I think Anthony Hitchens has, over the past 3 years, he spent 4 years with the Cowboys and really made an impact his rookie year, starting at all 3 different linebacker spots. His versatility is great because he can play everywhere, but he has been one of the unsung heroes of the Cowboys defense for the past 3 years. He is one of the glue guys. He is one of the solid guys in the locker room. And if you lose him, it is a huge loss, not just to the Cowboys defense, but to the entire organization.
Well, we talked about the free agents that the Cowboys signed. What we didn't talk about was the free agents that the Cowboys let go. And I think 2 names you go back to, and this is in reference to Anthony Hitchens in a way, is Barry Church, who now is 1 step away from playing in the Super Bowl. Everybody thought he was stupid for going to Jacksonville, and all of a sudden, when he goes to Jacksonville, he says, oh, there's more talent here than there is in Dallas, and we all laughed at that, but obviously he's turned out he was right. And then the second was Ron Leary, the guard they couldn't afford to keep, and he's now playing in Denver and had a pretty good season before he went on into reserve. But I think it tells you that you have to be careful about letting guys go too, and staying within that budget sometimes if they're really glue guys. And I think we're talking about Anthony Hitchens along with Ron Leary and
Leary was
Barry
absolutely
Church
a glue guy.
and those kind of glue guys. So you have to be careful about trying to keep those guys and what you're willing to spend or not spend on those guys. But sometimes they're worth more maybe than you really want to pay, but they're worth that extra money.
And losing Leary, it was compounded by the fact that Doug Free retired at right tackle. And so you had a 40% turnover, 2 out of your 5 starters on the offensive line left. So you lost Doug Free, and then a playmaker. I know he was a backup running back, but Lance Dunbar was a weapon when he was healthy. He was a big play guy in this offense. Gavin Escobar and Mark Sanchez, who also weren't retained, less impactful. But Lance Dunbar, you need some home run hitters, and we saw what happened when Ezekiel Elliott was out with the suspension. The Cowboys and also Bryce Butler missed some time with the plantar fasciitis, so you didn't really have your best downfield receiver, big play threat. And the Cowboys need more offensive playmakers.
Well, we're starting the offseason for the Cowboys. Playoffs are still ongoing, but the Cowboys have gone on into 2018 and getting ready for the 2018 season. And we'll be back in a week or 2 to talk more about the offseason and what's coming up for the Cowboys. For Christy Scales, I'm Shireen Williams. Thanks for joining us on Cowboys Talk.